Who is Whitey Bulger? The other day when I was reading about the FBI files being released, what would be interesting to the public to hear from somebody who was there? Okay, what did this man do 40, 50 years ago? What he did was, he was a thief, he was a gangster, he was a mobster. He was also an undercover operative, informant. And he was trading. He was giving the FBI what they needed so they would leave him alone. It's like, okay, go bust these other guys, which makes a lot of sense, you know? It's a trade-off. So then I was thinking, well, how could the public identify with a character like that? Well, he was an informant. Now he's going to become a witness. He's never been a witness. Undercover operative. Well, I did this, and what does it feel like to be this person? Well, you have to understand, when I met Russo, he realized that I was like a runaway train, and he had to figure out how to direct this runaway train. I mean, I got all this bustling energy. If you think I have energy today, you should have seen 25 years ago. I mean, they couldn't keep me down. It was like 18, 19 hours a day I could do this. So when I think about it, it's like, what's going on? What is it like a day in the life of a guy like Whitey Bulger? First of all, he was not an Italian gangster. So he had a little piece of Boston, but he was feared because he killed a lot of people. And the word gets out. They know that, they don't know the detail, let's say the other criminals in that element, in that Irish, life of crime in the south part of Boston, okay? It's just like New York, Brooklyn, Queens. People know about other gangsters, other mobsters, other hitmen. They know how bad they are. So they pick and choose who they're going to associate with. So in my flashing back to allow the public an insight, a little view about what it's like to be a criminal, okay? And then one day come across to the other side. Well, now you have to understand, you're giving the FBI information on what it's like out there. They never get that close. Once in a while they might have an FBI agent, infiltrate a particular a small crew, a few guys or something. But, at this point, if you're working every day and you're making wiretaps and you're giving information, what is it like? And who is handling you? Like Russo, who was a very detailed, organized guy. He had an amazing methodology about him, the way he conducted his, life as an FBI agent. Well, he was beyond reproach, Russo. But when I read back about Conley, I believe this guy got so caught up in the life in a vicarious fashion. He probably wanted to be Whitey Bulger or next to him. So he was protecting him in one way with the FBI, but he was participating because Ed McDonald, who was the U.S. Task Force in Brooklyn, the U.S. attorney that I know well for 25, 30 years now, he knew all about Conley getting cases of booze and giving out to other FBI agents. He knows all this information. So coupled with what he knows through attorneys and, current attorneys up in Boston and prosecutors and law enforcement agents, Conley was sort of living the life. So there was a catch there for Bulger, where, in fact, Russo, who was my FBI handler, he never crossed over. He always did the right things. And he would never let me know what's going on. It was always the left doesn't let the right know what's going on. I was definitely on a need-to-know basis. I didn't need to know what he was doing. Where in the Boston situation way back, they didn't have high-tech technology. They didn't have video cameras back in the early 70s. They didn't chronicle all this stuff with Bulger, So for the public to understand what it's like to be a criminal and then stop every once in a while like he did. See, he was a criminal a long time working both sides. For me, it was a short span when I stopped my crime life to flip over. But still working with the FBI, you had to follow their guidelines. You have to be honest. You have to, you have to agree to not commit crimes again, because then you'll violate your agreement A, and then B, you'll have no credibility. If you flip and become a government informant, a witness, or a cooperating, operative, you have to agree not to commit crimes. Well, with Bulger, he didn't agree to anything. He had free reign. So, and I'm sure that Conley got so caught up with the money and the perks, everything was compromised up there.
Now do Boston mobs, New York mobs, they have nothing to do with each other though, typically, right? I mean, they don't interact necessarily.
I think what happens is if you make a connection with a guy from another area, you might do something with him because he has credibility. I mean, up there in Boston, it was a smaller a smaller life of crime up there than like New York is so big. There was one popular mob boss up there, this guy Raymond Patriarca, and so there was always this conflict between the Irish and the Italians. But the Italians stood in their area, and I'm sure if the Irish came over and stepped into some of their turf, they were going to let them know it. So I am sure that Bulger took advantage of his contact with the FBI to set up the Italians, to keep the focus off him.
Do you think Whitey knew that Connolly was? I mean, do you think Whitey played that card?
Oh yeah, I'm sure he played that. He was influenced, and I met FBI agents who told me, I said, what would you do if you weren't an FBI agent? I would have been a criminal like you. Why? Because it's great. You don't pay for anything. You get all the perks. You don't have to worry about income tax. You get the best clothes, the best seats in the restaurant. Who wouldn't want to be a mobster? I mean, this is what they said 30 years ago. But I mean, a lot of those guys, they played both sides, law enforcement.
So as this trial comes together then, what's the FBI afraid of?
Well, I'm not sure. I think the whole issue of disclosure about because basically today the public looks at FBI as the same as it was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Not so. I mean, everything they do is under a microscope now. I don't think they had the freedom. It's just like the Americans. We don't have the freedom we used to have. We'd walk into an airport without going through a metal detector or taking your shoes off and showing ID. So it's all about freedom. I think the FBI is constrained now, okay, by a lot of regulatory policy. And therefore, if they let out all the information that what happened 35, 40 years ago, it's going to be embarrassing. It's going to be embarrassing for the government. It's going to be embarrassing for the FBI. What has Whitey Bulger got to lose at 83? Just tell the truth.
But embarrassing how? Because
they let him get away.
Yeah, because here's what I'm thinking, right? Because I think you believe they basically let Whitey do what he wants in exchange for a bunch of information.
He was supposed to be able to do anything but one thing. Murder.
But he murdered 18
Murdered
people.
anyway, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So how about the people that are relatives to these victims that he murdered?
Right.
It's no different than the Boston situation up there with the bombing.
But because, as you mentioned, there's nothing in writing here, more than likely.
That's right.
So, does anyone really take what Whitey has to say seriously? Because that was something you faced. You faced that in the trial, too. You got really upset about the fact that people wouldn't give you credibility, that you were telling the truth.
Right.
But because Gotti got away with it,
Yeah.
people figured, well, and because you testified with someone that wasn't as credible as you were,
Right.
you thought that sort of tarnished your reputation as being credible.
Right.
I wonder with the same thing with Whitey. Will anyone actually believe Whitey?
Well, I think they're going to believe the myth that's been created by the media, that he was Whitey Bulger and that he was the guy in Departed. I think that's all true. The movie was based on somebody like him, okay? And if he gets up there and says in his own words all the stuff that he did, what the hell has he got to do? If he wants to just tell the truth. And even if he does admit, yeah, okay, so I murdered such and such a guy, and this guy Weeks is going to go up there and certainly corroborate his story about, well, they're going to corroborate each other's stories, that they murdered people and they moved the bodies. I mean, if you read about this stuff, you'll see how vast it is. What does he have to lose at 83 years old? I mean, he's going to die in prison anyway. And why are they even taking him to trial? That's my question. I guess if they didn't take him to trial, what are they going to do? Let him go? So they're stuck now with him. They got to do something. They can't not do anything, but they must do something. What is it that they're going to do? I mean, and so if he goes through the legal course of justice here, he's going to go to trial for these murders. They're going to convict him. They're going to give him life. Okay, I don't think they'll give him the death penalty. Who knows? And what's the public going to learn from this? At 83 years old, after 50 years of being a criminal, he tells the truth, or is it even the truth? Is it slanted? Is he going to admit to that he murdered? And is he going to, for some reason, I think there's a sense that he may be able to provide exculpatory evidence for Conley in one way, because Conley's doing 25 or 30 years or 40 years or something. It's terrible, the situation. But I don't really know what his role was. Was he acting, in a judicial manner as an FBI agent? Was he, straight-laced, or was he tainted and slanted by this life that Bulger lived? Or did maybe he did participate in murder, and he's never going to say it, and maybe Bulger's never going to say it. I mean, we had this similar situation, this guy, Willie Boyd Johnson, in the 80s when he flipped, when he was exposed as an undercover informant in the Gotti case, but he never admitted to the murders. You know, he didn't admit to anything, and he thought that Gotti was going to give him a pass after the case, after Gotti was acquitted, and he went on with his life, lived in Brooklyn for like 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden one day he was machine gunned to death on the streets in Brooklyn. So, I mean, he never admitted to the murders, but the FBI had all kinds of information, you know, reports that he had given. The problem with the FBI today is that if they reveal all of the information that he was responsible for giving them, they might feel that they're going to be compromised in the future, because once you reveal the informant's cooperation, how does that look good if you're going to try to get more informants involved? You haven't protected them. You blew their cover.
So yeah, this was what I was going to ask. First part, how does this change the landscape? The mob's already changed, as you know, and
Right.
as you've mentioned, you have no connection to the current mob, so you couldn't necessarily, you know, dissect the change of that landscape.
Right.
But you can predict how this would change the landscape of the FBI.
Right.
So is that what you think their fear is? Is that basically this sets a precedence for how they have to do business in the future with this type of stuff?
Well, do they want to reveal all the machinations of Whitey Bulger? Let's go away from Whitey Bulger. Let's talk about today, 2013. The number one focus in the United States is what? Terrorism. So if they have a subject or a possible, you know, person of interest, they're going to go look for an informant. They'll go to an informant and they'll say, we're FBI, we're going to protect you, you got to help us get this suspect or this operative or this here person of interest. And he'll say, wait a second, are you going to compromise me like the FBI did to Whitey Bulger? So it all becomes like this public sort of trade thing, you know? They want to keep their credibility, the credibility of, like, for example, when you go into the witness protection program, they want you to survive. They don't want you to get murdered. Because if you get murdered, what's the chances of them getting more guys to flip and come over? You don't want to get murdered, see? So my question here is, what's the trade-off here? Do they want to reveal everything they have about Bulger? In actuality, they're compromising their procedure as a law enforcement, the number one law enforcement agency of the world. We even have all FBI offices in Russia now. Can you imagine? And so if they reveal everything about him, where is his protection? Where is his confidentiality? Where is that? Where is the anonymity of him giving information to the government in view of, let's say, the future? Terrorism, spying, okay, corporate espionage, all of this, because the FBI works on secrecy, and they're only as good as their information anyway. So what do they want to do? They want to develop informants. That's what they want to do.
So in a way, and I've thought about this for a while now, in a way, other than the fact that Whitey Bulger's in jail, he was already in jail to an extent. He was living in the same place for 10 years.
Right,
you know,
right.
They almost did him a favor. His being arrested and caught allows him to vindicate himself. It allows him to, you know, it allows him to come clean, so to speak, and maybe justify his actions, or he gets another shot at his 15 minutes here. The man's going to be very famous for quite a while here.
He's going to go down as a legend, right? But the point is that he is claiming that he had immunity. Where did the immunity come from? Let me tell you, when I signed to get money from the U.S. Marshals while I was in the witness protection program, they did not give you a check. They did not give you a receipt. You were lucky to even know. I was lucky to even know my number was 4554 in the witness protection program. That's my number. My wife's number was 4555. My kids, I'm just saying, there is no receipts. There is no membership card. You're in the witness protection program. It doesn't say that. It's not happening, you see? So what I'm telling you is, how are we to know what really transpired between a dead U.S. attorney and the FBI, who's now in jail, when he says, I got an immunity from these people?
But
where did the immunity begin and where did it end?
And isn't it also the ultimate fuck you too from Whitey? Because Whitey now he's going to come clean, and he's
Yeah.
going to fuck over the FBI in the process.
And the government.
Yeah.
To show the government what they were really like. And they were corrupt back then.
And
there was corruption there.
And so here's a guy that's we know of at least 18 murders, but we assume
Yeah.
far more than that.
Right.
This man has gotten away with his murders.
Right.
He's been living scot-free
Right.
until now.
Yeah.
And now he's about to stick it all to them at the end. I mean,
Yeah.
really.
And he has nothing to lose. 83.
And he's the last real, as you said, he's the last window into the old mob.
Right.
On
Exactly.
a public
Yeah.
scale,
Right.
national scale.
And it was easy for me to hang out in that courthouse where I got busted for the cocaine charge, and get the judge and pay him off. It was easy for me to do. But then I would have just continued in the life. So I figured, well, I can do this. Why not do it for the government? Show them what I can do, and I get to pass out. I'm done. I'm finished, and I can never go back. I think essentially the idea of never going back was a line. It was a cutting line there, you know. Once you make the decision, you can't go backwards. And I think it was good for me, and it was good for the kids to see that I made that decision. Was I a Buddhist priest or perfect after that? No. But they're broadcasting every word, and it's clear as a bell.
But you know, when you start talking, right? As per the doc and the book, he hands you a note first, right?
First he handed me the note, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but I want to make sure because I'm treating this like people
Yeah.
don't know. So he hands you a note,
Oh, I explode then.
and what does the note say?
If you're wired, you're dead.
Is that verbatim? Is that the
Yeah,
exact words?
right.
Now, he's not going to be the guy to do anything, right?
No.
So what was he planning to do? So
He's trying to make a point.
right. So what he's saying is, at this point, if you're wearing a wire, he expects
It's
you.
over.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think he's expecting you to do? Show that you're wearing a wire?
I don't know. He wasn't a very bright guy, but I knew right away what I needed to do was just pull all my clothes off.
At this
And
point,
yell and scream and get aggressive with him.
and as this happens, do you feel pretty good at this moment? 'Cause-
Oh, I'm in an act now. It's like I got to roll. This is like a fun thing. I rip my clothes off. It's like yelling and screaming. You dirty son of a bitch! Look at you. Are you kidding? In my neighborhood, they would kill me if any idea even popped up like this. You know, who do you think I am? I wouldn't do such a thing. You know, look at all my clothes. And he goes, all right, it's okay now, and I feel better. He didn't see I had anything. Oh, you know, it was just.
So
And
after
it was all done extemporaneously. I mean, the whole thing was that way. That meeting.
after that experience, did you ever feel like you would have been a good cop?
No, they took me to dinner. All the FBI agents showed up and said, man, you should be in Hollywood. You're an actor, man. That's what you are. You're an actor, man. You know, because they knew none of this was planned. They didn't know what was going to happen.
But could you see though where you could have taken that to
Yeah, I could have been law enforcement.
and you could have been really good at busting these people,
could
you
have
know.
been,
But that's
I
the
was-
life. I mean, you know.
I was a real live Serpico. Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. And it was exciting to do it because I knew that I got the goods for them. And I convinced them to put us back on. The deal was on again.